Welcome grade 11s. I want to welcome you to the Junior Tikkie Summer School. So there will be a series of videos which will be live streamed in the next few weeks on our Junior Tikkie.online platform. Please use the given material as revision and also look at all the grade 11 content on our platform. So let's get started. I am Ms. Kutsia, and today we will look at grade 11 life science papers from November 2021. So let's look at question 1.4. So question 1 forms part of section A, which is a total of 50 marks out of the 150. So here you will notice that they have given you 4 different organisms. So you will see that they all belong to the plant kingdom, and then we have our different plant groups as well. So before we get started, let's just have a look at a summary of what each of these plants entail. So firstly, we will look at the first plant division, so which is known as the bryophyte. So the plant that we are looking at is a moss plant. So here they've given you a few examples or a few labels. So the important ones is the sporophyte and the gametophyte. So your sporophyte is the section of the plant that produces spores. So remember that a spore is a haploid cell. Then we have the gametophyte. So this is actually the part that produces gametes. So remember, gametes means the male and female sex cell, so the sperm and the ovum. So in this specific plant, in the moss plant, the gametophyte is the dominant generation. So meaning that the bigger portion of the life expectancy of this plant will be the gametophyte, where the sporophyte is just temporarily. So it will grow out of the gametophyte after fertilization, and then it will produce spores and then die off, and the cycle starts over again. Then our next plant division is the pteridophytes, and this example that we are looking at is the fern plant. So the first section is my fern plant. So, and on the right hand side, you will see that it's the gametophyte, the one that forms a heart shape. So again, the gametophyte generation produces gametes, so sperm cells and ovums, where your sporophyte, which is the part on the left-hand side, produces spores, specific on the sorry. So it produces spores that's haploid. So in the fern plant, the dominant generation is the opposite, where the sporophyte is now the dominant generation, and the prothallus, which is the gametophyte generation, is only temporarily. Then we have the pine tree. So this forms part of the Angiosperms. This is the pine tree. We have the male cones on the edges of the branches that produces pollen and not sperm cells. Then we have mature female cones that produces the ovum, or that will house the seeds. We have young cones as well. And then your mature female cone will then contain the female gametes. So after fertilization, it will also house and protect the seeds. So here's an example of how the seeds will look after fertilization. It has this wing-like structure because the main pollinator for these, the main seed dispersal, or the main factor responsible for seed dispersal, is wind. So that's why it has the little wing-like structure, in order for the wind to pick up the seed and then travel a distance from the main tree. So this seed is also very light. So let's read through question 1.4. So the first one says, we have diagram 1, we have diagram 2, which is my fern plant. Diagram 1 is the moss plant. The fern diagram 2 also includes the prothallus, and then we have diagram 3, which is my pine tree. So here we have to mention the kingdom to which the organism belongs to. Question 1.4.2, we need to name the division or the phylum to which diagram 1 belongs to. Then 1.4.3, we need to give the letters that represents the gametophyte generation. So you will see there's a 2-mark allocation, so there will be 2. Then 1.4.4, give the diagram number of the group that does not rely on water for reproduction. So if you know your theory, diagram 1 and 2 relies on water for reproduction, but diagram 3 does not at all. Then 1.4.5, give the diagram number of the group that produces seeds. So let's move over to the memorandum. So question 1.4.1 wants the kingdom, which is the plant kingdom. 1.4.2 wants the phylum, which is the bryophyte, because it was diagram 1. Then 1.4.3, give only the letters. So the letters is B and D, and we only mark the first two. Then question 1.4.4, we need to give the diagram letter of the plant or the plant division that does not need water for reproduction, and that's going to be diagram 3, and then you get 2 marks that's allocated, and then give the diagram number of the group that produces seeds, and that's also 3, because diagram 1 and 2 produces spores. So the next section that we are looking at is section B. So this includes question number 2 and question 3. So these two questions is a total of 100 marks together out of 150, but question 2 and question 3 is divided into 50 marks each. So let's start with my first question. So here it states in 2.1, so that the coronavirus named COVID-19 escalated to a pandemic level during 2020. So scientists around the world raced to produce a vaccine to help fight the virus. However, it would take months before a vaccine could be released once it had been discovered. So in the section below, they have given you a structure of a virus. They have given you 2 labels, label A and label B. So question 2.1.1 asks you to provide the label for the parts labeled A and B respectively, so separately. Then question 2.1.2, they ask us why were antibiotics not prescribed to fight against the virus. Then 2.1.3, explain how a virus works to protect us from a disease. And then 2.1.4, why would it take so long for a vaccine to be released? So let's have a look at the memo. So label A is the protein code. Then we have label B, which is RNA. So here specifically, I feel that you can also write that it's a nucleic acid, because you do not necessarily have to know in the syllabus that the coronavirus is RNA. But this is something that you would have picked up throughout all the news reports regarding the coronavirus. 2.1.2, they wanted to know why can I not use antibiotics for a viral infection? So firstly, we use antibiotics against living organisms. So we use it to kill living organisms, but specifically bacteria. And we don't use it for viruses that's not living. 2.1.3, they just wanted to know how a vaccine will protect us against a virus. So firstly, they either inject you with a dead or a weak form of the microorganism. Please refrain from using the word germ. Then your body will produce antibodies against this specific infection, and then the antibodies will protect them against future or new infections. So that means the body will recognize the antigens or the virus much quicker. Then 2.1.4, why would it take so long? So the reason for it is that the vaccine would need to go through a trial period first so that we can make sure that it has no negative effects. So our next question is question 2.2. So this question is regarding malaria. So here it states that malaria causes over 400,000 deaths each year globally. So they want us to answer the following questions. 2.2.1 wants us to name the protozoan that causes malaria. Then 2.2.2 what is the vector that spreads malaria? So the vector is the intermediate, something before it reaches the host. 2.2.3, give 2 common symptoms in a malaria patient. And then 2.2.4, how can malaria be prevented if there's no medication or vaccine available? So let's have a look at our memo. So firstly, the name of the protozoa that is responsible is Plasmodium. Please make sure that you write it with a capital letter. Then 2.2.2, the vector is the mosquito, specifically the female Anopheles mosquito. So remember, the parasite or the Plasmodium parasite is found in the mosquito, and then only it gets transferred to the humans, which is the host. So humans is the host and the vector is the mosquito. 2.2.3, we need to give 2 common symptoms in a malaria patient. So these symptoms are very, very similar to flu, some of them, and also food poisoning. So when you visit a doctor, you need to state and make sure you tell the doctor that you've been in a specific malaria area so that he can understand the symptoms as well. So here you will see we have headaches, fevers, sweating or night sweats, chills, muscle spasms, abdominal pain, diarrhea, nausea and vomiting, a loss of appetite, and also coughing. So let's have a look at question 2.3. So question 2.3 is about our next plant division, which is the Angiosperms, because it's flowering plants. So let's read through the given information and the questions to see what is asked from us. So they say in 2.3 that potatoes are the staple food in many countries, including Peru. The International Potato Center in Lima, Peru, is a seed bank that stores 4,500 different varieties of potatoes. Many of these varieties are not used as farmers prefer to use only a few varieties which grow well. So most farmers practice monoculture and grow only one variety of potato. So remember that the word mono refers to one. I'll explain to you just now what the word monoculture means. To collect the potato seeds, the fruit or potato berry is picked and ripened. The seeds can remain viable for many years. So that means the seed can be in a dormant phase for quite a few years. So the diagram below, so you'll see that my diagram is not below but on my right hand side in the PowerPoint, show the potato berry in diagram A. So at first it looked like a tomato to me, so this is an example of your potato berry. The potato seeds inside the berry is given in diagram B, so you can see the different seeds there, and then the potato flower, which is here at the bottom. So what they want to ask from us is that they want the plant division to which this plant belongs to. So remember that it produces a fruit, it produces seeds that's surrounded by fruit, and a flower. So that should be your key. Then provide the labels for U and V. So in diagram C, so there's U and V in diagram C. Then they want the letter and the name. So this is a 2-mark allocation. 1 mark for the letter, 1 mark for the name. So they want the structure that will develop into the potato berry after fertilization. So it's 2 marks. Then also the structure where the male gametes are produced. So remember the male gametes is pollen. 2.3.4, the potato flowers are bright purple. So we have a bright color with a small amount of nectar. So these two should be a clue for which pollinator is responsible for pollinating these flowers. Then give 1 advantage of monoculture and 1 disadvantage of a monoculture. So a monoculture is when a farmer only plants 1 type of vegetable or crop year after year. So there is quite a lot of good and bad things regarding that situation, which we will cover now. So let's have a look at the memorandum for the first 3 questions. So the name of the plant division, they said that it's plant, But I do not agree with this because this is the kingdom. The division that this plant belongs to is the angiosperm. Then 2.3.2, provide a label for U and V. So U is the corolla and V is the calyx. Then give the letter and the name for the following diagrams, for the following structures. The structure that develops into the potato berry. So that will be R, you will see over here R, and that is your ovary. Then the next one is the section where the male gamete is produced. So it's only in this little structure, so it's S, and it's known as the anther. Then the next two questions, where you have to suggest how these flowers can be pollinated. If it is a bright purple and it produces small amounts of nectar. So the nectar is usually sweet or it has a very pleasant smell. So over here it will be insects. They also said wind, which I do not necessarily agree with this. I think the main pollinator is insects, as it produces nectar and as well as a bright purple flower. Usually the flowers that relies on wind for pollination is not a bright color. It's a very dull color. They have very light and powdery pollen. And then also you can give self-pollination. So how you know it's self-pollination and not cross-pollination is that this entire structure over here, you'll see that my anther stretches over my entire pistil. So that means the pollen from my ripe anther can then move directly to that same flower's stigma. Then an advantage of monoculture and a disadvantage. So the advantage is that you can produce a large amount of food and the farming practices is very easy. Then a pest population will increase rapidly and it destroys the entire crop. And it also increases the amount of pesticides that you have to use. So with monoculture, it also depletes specific nutrients in the soil that the farmer has to work back into the soil, and that will cost quite a lot of money. So question 2.3.6 says, explain 2 reasons why seed banks are important. So you'll see that it's quite a hefty memo over here. So there's quite a variety. So firstly, if crops are wiped out by an attack from insects or by pesticides or because of a natural disaster, if they are all the same variety, we can have certain things set in place that will recover them from the situation. So seed banks may store a variation of the crop, even though farmers don't use all the varieties, but some can be hardier or resistant against diseases. So we can replace them when it wipes out our crops. Then also we can have unusual and rare varieties that are not commercially farmed, but it maintains biodiversity. Then we also keep cultures of the plant that are not usually grown for the seeds. So in case they are needed to replace plants that goes extinct in the wild. Then endemic species need to be preserved as they don't occur anywhere else in the world. Then endangered species may be preserved in case that they go extinct. Then species may have the potential to provide us with substances of a medical use, and then also must be preserved so that they can be studied before they go extinct. Then in question 2.3.7, they say that farmers, however, do not use seeds to grow potato plants, but rather they plant the potato tuber that has started to grow roots as shown in the picture below. So this I have seen quite a lot as I've left potatoes for quite a while, and I will notice that there's a few roots growing from the potato. 2.3.7, they say, is this method of growing potatoes an example of asexual or sexual reproduction? So remember, asexual does not involve the male and female gamete, where sexual reproduction needs and involves the male and female gamete that fuses during fertilization. Then, okay, so 2.3.7 is an example of asexual reproduction because I did not have fertilization that take place here. Then 2.3.8 explain one advantage of growing potatoes in this way. So, firstly, it grows faster than from the seed, so therefore can produce potatoes in a shorter amount of time. You do not need to wait for the seed to germinate as this potato is already germinating. So, question 2.4 is our second last question of question 2. So in question 2.4, they say the diagrams below show animals that belong to the same phylum. So in question 2.4.1, they want you to identify the phylum to which these 3 organisms belong to. So there were 6 that you had to know. So these organisms will have the same radial symmetry, the same, or they might have cephalization or not. They might have a blood system, and we will look at different characteristics as we go through this section. So 2.4.1, name the phylum. Then 2.4.2, what type of symmetry is shown by the members of the phylum above. Then 2.4.3, draw a simple label diagram of a cross-section through the body wall of tissue layers. That's your key, tissue layers found in the phylum. So these are very simple organisms as they are one of the few that started to develop in the beginning. So this will most likely be a diploblastic organism. 2.4.4 explain how the body plan of this phylum of animals is suited for their sedentary mode of living. So sedentary means that they are stationary, they do not move around, that they are just situated in one specific area. So let's have a look at the memo. So the phylum to which they belong to is Malaria, and then they have radial symmetry. So if you have a look here on your right hand side, here I give you the difference between radial symmetry and bilateral. So how I remember it, if it's bilateral, something will have a definite head. So if there's a head present or sensory sensors that's accumulated in the anterior part of the organism, it is bilateral. If you can cut this section into different sections, each section will be exactly the same. So this is very beneficial as they can detect stimuli in any direction. So then question 2.4.3, you had to draw a simple labeled diagram. So please remember that they want labels. I have seen quite a lot of learners just draw the section or the diagram, they forget the heading and completely forget about the labels. And you need to draw the tissue layers. So this is a diploblastic animal. So we have our gut, we have the ectoderm and the endoderm. So you get 1 mark for the heading, so the body plan of Malaria showing the tissue layers, then 1 mark for the correct drawing, and then 2 marks for the label. Then 2.4.4, you had to explain how the body plan of the phylum of animals is suited for their environment. So they are radial symmetry. So here they gave another mark for radial symmetry, and therefore they can then sense food or stimuli or even danger in all directions. So this is also the advantage of having radial symmetry. So question 2.5, this is now our last question for question 2. So 2.5 says, study the diagram of the earthworm below. So the earthworms belong to a phylum Annelida, which are coelomate animals, which means that they have a coelom. So at first, if you look at the diagram, it's really complex, but they've given you key things to look at in this diagram to answer some of these questions. So 2.5.1, they ask you, does this organism show cephalization? So cephalization refers to sense organs that accumulate at the anterior part. So usually these organisms will have a distinct head. And with your earthworm, you will definitely notice that. 2.5.2, give a reason for your answer, why you say there's cephalization or not. Then 2.5.3, how has a coelom been an advantage to the earthworm? A clue here is to go through your diagram and look at what has been given. 2.5.4, why is a blood system necessary necessary in annelids? Then 2.5.5, describe how earthworms are economically important to farmers. So let's have a look at the memo. So does the organism have cephalization? Yes, definitely. There's an accumulation of sensors in the anterior part, so in the head of the organism. Give a reason. So here they say that it has a brain. You can even identify that it has a distinct head. Then 2.5.3, how has a coelom been an advantage to the earthworm? It's because the body wall works independently from the gut wall. Then 2.5.4, why is a blood system necessary? So due to the separation of the blood wall and the gut, that means that the coelom, there has to be a transport system for diffusion of nutrients, waste products, and gases. So that's why I will need a blood system, very similar to humans as well. A blood system. So that's why we have our blood system, for the transportation of waste, nutrients, and gases. 2.5.5, describe how earthworms are economically important to farmers. So most importantly, that earthworms are decomposers. So they eat dead organic plant material. So feces of the earthworm is very rich in nutrients for the plants, and it enriches the soil, so it keeps the soil fertile. They aerate the soil. So the word aerate refers to the section that there's small little openings within, that create little spaces between soil particles, so that there is a flow of air into the soil. So it creates tunnels. So this will then help filtrate the soil, so with water, and then it helps plants to grow their roots as well. It's filled with air basically for other microorganisms. So grade 11s, let's look at question 3.1. So this is the last question of our question paper, which is a total out of 50 out of the 150 marks. So in this extract, they say read the extract below and study the graph and study the zebra and lion population in Parkwood Game Reserve over a period of 65 years. Then they say the most important reason that lions are able to find enough food is that they usually do their hunting cooperatively. So that means they work together as a group. Normally, several lions circle around the herd. They are attacking, slowly driving their victims towards the lionesses, hiding in the tall grass. The lionesses then attacks their prey from the side or the rear. Lions are not fast predators. By working in a group, they are able to tackle prey that would otherwise prove to be too fast for them. Lions also gain another advantage through group hunting when they kill animals too large for them to tackle on their own. Zebras are one of the major prey of lions. And then we can move over to our graph. So our graph shows the zebra and lion population in Parkwood Game Reserve from 1950 to 2015. Or you can say over a period of 65 years. So on your x-axis, you will have your independent variable, which is the years. On your y-axis, you have your dependent variable, which is the number of animals. That's the one that we were measuring. Then we are looking at two graphs. We look at A and we look at B. So in the top section, they said what you need to remember is that, let me just quickly see where it is, that lions are able to find their food as they work together. Now, usually they work in a group and they have to surround a herd that's much larger or much more The numbers are much more than what they are. So if we want to know which one of these two, A or B, is the prey will always be higher in comparison to my predator. Because otherwise, if my predator is higher than my prey, the graph, the numbers of my prey will decrease significantly. And straight after that, it will influence the number of predators available as well. So let's read through question 3.1.3. They say give 2 reasons mentioned in the extract why the social structure, so hunting together, of the pride makes them successful hunters. Then, question 3.1.2, what type of relationship is shown between the lion and the zebras in the graph? So let's have a look at my memo. So question 3.1.1 states where we had to give 2 reasons for this social structure for the hunting. It's so that they can capture prey that's too fast for them, and they can also tackle prey that's too large for them. The relationship is predation or a predator-prey relationship. Question 3.1.3. Which line, A or B, represents the lion population? So in this case, it's going to be A. So remember I said that the predators is usually less than the number of prey. Question 3.1.4, give 2 reasons for your answer. So they say graph A increases and decreases. So A increases after a decrease in B. So you will see that A increases, and as B decreases, you'll notice a decrease as well in A. So that means that this graph will influence the numbers on this graph. Then they say there are fewer individuals in A than in B, and then there is less fluctuation in the numbers in A than in B. Question 3.1.5. In 1995, there was a large decrease in the number of zebras in the reserve. Give 1 environmental factor that could have caused this. So this specifically is environmental factor. So it's a drought or a flood or any factor that can influence it. An earthquake, a hurricane, even diseases. 3.1.3. Zebras live in a herd. Explain one reason why living in a herd is an advantage. So living in large numbers means that individuals is less likely to get caught by the predators. As there are many eyes to spot predators, as running in a herd may reduce the ability of predators to focus only on one individual. Question 3.1.7. Explain why the chance of the zebras and the lion population reaches carrying capacity is limited. So let's have a look. They say if the prey numbers increases, the predator numbers will increase, causing the prey numbers to decrease, which will cause the predator numbers to decrease again. So these 2 graphs, these 2 numbers are very influential with one another. They influence one another quite a lot. So the predator and the prey numbers depend on each other. This helps to control the population size. So if the one increases, the other one causes it to decrease again. So let's have a look at question 3.2. So question 3.2.1. Define the following. You have to define and give the definition of global warming and food security. So global warming is the increase in the average temperature of Earth. So it's very, very important that you mention the word average temperature. Then food security is the access to enough nutritious food at all times by all people. So this definition counts quite a lot of marks. You will see that we have 3, and there's 4 possible places that you can be allocated the mark. So it's enough food, it must be nutritious, and then there must be food at all times for all people. Then name the main gas produced by humans that is responsible for global warming. That is carbon dioxide. Then explain how global warming has a negative effect on food security. So firstly, that increase in carbon dioxide, or that carbon dioxide levels, or the carbon dioxide gas gets trapped in the atmosphere. Because of a change in the average temperature of Earth, it causes changes in the rainfall patterns. So that means that it can result in desertification, increase in flooding, or even wildfires. So that will result in quite a big loss of our vegetation. So this will increase soil erosion. So again, we will lose the fertility of the soil. So that means there will be fewer crops that will be planted, or a lower yield. And then there will be less food available for livestock as well. Again, the higher temperatures will have a negative effect on the livestock and the crops, as it decreases the rate of photosynthesis, and it's going to decrease the availability of food. So, and then also obviously an increase in food prices eventually. So question 3.3, they want us to go through this section. So it says, the spread of invasive alien plants in the water catchment areas of South Africa is concerning. In a country that is already water scarce, this means that less water is available for agricultural and domestic use. A recent study of the Oliphant River catchment area looked at the water consumption of some of the most invasive species and the area that they invaded. So here they gave you a result. So here is the different species on my left-hand side. So this will be your independent variable. Then you have two columns. Now your second two columns is always your dependent variables. So the first dependent variable is going to be your water consumption, and the second dependent variable is the area invaded by these plants. And that's specifically the two questions that we looked at over here. So then your independent variable is your invasive alien species, and the dependent variable, is the water consumption and the area that they invaded. Then question 3.3.2. So what method could have been used to calculate the area invaded by the alien species? That would be, this we did on the previous page. So they said the quadrant or simple sampling. Then how much water did Pinus species consume in the Oliphant River catchment area? Show all calculations. So what they did over here was the 2,550 cubed meters divided by, or per hectare, times by 750 hectares, and that gives you the total over here. So you will see you get 1 mark on this side for multiplying the two values, and then your answer you get 1 mark, and then 1 mark for your unit. So if you go to that specific species, the Pinus species, you will see if we read off that value, it's 2,550. If we go back to our table, you will see that there's the 750. So you take the two values and you multiply them together. Then question 3.3.3. How much water did Pinus species consume in the Oliphant River? That is the one that we just did. 3.3.4. Draw a suitable graph to show the water consumption of the various invasive alien species in the Oliphant River catchment area. So what they did over here is we did a bar graph, as they are independent from one another. So they say that my heading is, you get 1 mark for the caption, showing graph showing the water consumption of various alien species. So what's important here, they just asked for the water consumption. Then you get 1 mark for the type of graph. So in this case, it was a bar graph. You get 1 mark for your X label, and that the bars are equally spaced apart. So the distance over here should be the same, and the space and the size of the bars should be equal. Then the y-axis, also 1 mark. Your scale should be appropriate, spaces should be equal, and then also your label. So water consumption, remember you need to add the unit, an alien invasive species here at the bottom, and you have to include the different species. Then plotting, you get 2 marks. No marks if you plotted incorrectly. 1 mark if the first 1 to 6 bars are correct, and if all of them are correct, you will receive both marks. And this was a total of 6 marks. Then question 3.3.5 give 3 ways that can be used to get rid of an alien invasive species. So we can make use of a biological control, chemical control, or mechanical control. So the biological control, you can use a specific insect that feeds off of these species. Chemical control can be something like a pesticide or a poison or something that can get rid of it. Mechanical can be a physical method that can destroy these alien species. Question 3.3.6 give 1 way you as an individual can reduce the number of invasive alien species in South Africa. So do not remove plants or exotic plants in your garden. Remove exotic plants from your garden. So you have to remove them, so physically getting rid of them, or from a hacking club to chop down these alien trees. So you get rid of these alien trees. Let's move to our last question, question 3.4. So in this question, they have given us 2 population graphs. So here they say that the population pyramid below shows the change in South African population from 1990 to 2019. We can see that South Africa is moving from a developing country in 1990 to a more developed country. The data was collected by means of a census. So on my left-hand side over here, I will have my developing country, as the birth rate is much higher in comparison to the death rates. And then if we move over to the right-hand side, slowly but surely we're turning into a developed country where there's a larger number of younger and older people that survives and a smaller birth rate. So it's slowly but surely changing into a developed country. So question 3.4.1 says, define the concept census. So the word census is the total count of all individuals in a population. Question 3.4.2, which groups, male or females, have a higher life expectancy? So if we quickly go back to our graph, we will just have a look. On my left-hand side, I have males, females on the right-hand side, and you will see the tendency for the females to be higher than the males is more frequent. So 3.4.2 will be the females. Question 3.4.3, which pyramid, 1990 or 2019, shows a rapid increase in the population? That would be 1990. Low life expectancy, same again, 1990. 3.4.4 explain 2 reasons for the change in the shape of the pyramid from 1990 to 2019. So over here, 3.4.4, it says there is a decrease in the birth rate due to better education, availability of birth control, or changes in lifestyle, so improved lifestyle, or even better opportunities for women. And there's an increase in the life expectancy due to better health care. Question 3.4.5, why is it important for the government to have information shown in the population graph? So it's useful for the planning of healthcare, the social welfare of your population, education, creating employment, provision of resources, and then lastly, housing needs. Thank you, Junior Tukkies. Please make sure that you watch our next videos.